The Brandenburg Concertos is a set of 6 concertos that Johann Sebastian Bach wrote in the late 1710s and gathered together into a self-standing collection in 1721. He didn't give them the name Brandenburg Concertos, but they got that name imposed on them later because he dedicated this collection to the Margrave of Brandenburg, an aristocrat who lived in Berlin. When Bach wrote these concertos, he was working at the court of the Prince Leopold of Anhalt-Köthen. But Bach was a careerist. He had a lot of mouths to feed. He needed a stable salary, so he was always looking for ways to move up in the musical establishments.
And how many kids did he have?
21.
Bach sent these 6 concertos, presumably looking for a job. It was a hint to the Margrave that he was available and on the market. But the Margrave didn't have the requisite musicians on staff to perform these concertos, so it seems as if these concertos went into his library, and there they stayed unheard. The concerto was probably the primary musical genre of the Baroque period. They were the lifeblood of Baroque composers. Taken as a whole, these 6 Brandenburg concertos stand as a sort of encyclopedia of what was possible in the concerto repertoire at that time. The variety of instrumentation in these works is just extraordinary. Every single one of these 6 concertos is written for a different ensemble. It uses different instruments, and so the ear is constantly delighted in different ways. The first Brandenburg Concerto is indeed an introduction. It's a rather formal piece. There are solo horns, there are solo oboes. It's setting the aristocratic tone that you would expect in a piece that's going to be dedicated to a Margrave.
The fun thing about this piece is that you can clearly hear what's going on. You don't have to be a musical genius to appreciate Bach.
Now, the second Brandenburg Concerto, this is the first of the really virtuosic concertos because it has not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 soloists, and only one of them is a violin. This is a very unusual thing. We have a solo flute, we have a solo oboe, and we have a solo trumpet. The third Brandenburg Concerto is an orchestral piece. It's only for strings. This is what I always think of as one of the most choreographic pieces of music because you actually see the music pass from one solo group to another solo group. The first violins to the second violins to the third violins to the first violas. You'll see figures of music just kind of bouncing around in a very visual way.
Bach had a very tight harmonic structure. Still, within that clear blueprint, there's tons of room for interpretation.
The fourth Brandenburg Concerto is one that I classify as a virtuosic concerto, much as the second and the fifth. Bach writes an especially beautiful fugue as the conclusion of the fourth Brandenburg Concerto. Harpsichords were a standard instrument in the Baroque chamber and orchestral formulation. There are harpsichords used all the time. But in the fifth Brandenburg Concerto, we're surprised because it breaks into a soloist's role and it becomes an equal soloist to some of the other instrumental lines. This becomes the first concerto in the history of music that really spotlights the harpsichord as a full-fledged solo instrument.
When you play the fifth one with a solo part, you feel like a king.
Musicians love having the opportunity to really play as soloists and to do technically virtuosic sorts of things that are required by the Brandenburg Concertos.
The Brandenburg Sixth Concerto is for 2 viola soloists. It's a nice chance for us to shine and play one of the pieces that was written expressly for violas.
The 2 of us.
It's written for us. That's right. Because we are playing off one another's rhythmic beat, it provides sort of that rocking rhythmic stability that people respond to in Bach. That's why Bach is so catchy. It makes you want to get up and dance.
It's my favorite piece. It moves me to the marrow of my bones, that piece.
In terms of instrumentation, in terms of formal structural layouts, it's extraordinary what Bach achieved in these pieces. They are such obvious masterpieces right from the first hearing. There's just not another set of Baroque concertos that goes as far in its thinking as the Brandenburg Concertos.